The stars above the Milky Way were quiet, as they had been for thousands of years. Whole civilizations had risen and fallen in that silence. Trade routes, empires, and alliances had come and gone. But somewhere, buried deep in forgotten records and ancient memory, there was a promise made in blood and fire, called the 3,500-year Armistice. Most believed it was just a legend now, a myth about a war so old that no one even remembered who had started it. But humans remembered. They always remembered. The Zyran Empire was one of the oldest alien civilizations in the galaxy. They were tall, scaled, and proud, a species that once ruled hundreds of worlds. Long ago, when they first met humans, they thought of them as nothing more than noisy animals who had barely learned how to travel between stars. But when the first shots were fired, the Zyran learned a terrible truth. Humans never knew when to surrender. The war that followed burned through entire systems. Planets were reduced to glass, and fleets of thousands vanished in days. Both sides lost count of their dead. When peace finally came, it was not through kindness or mercy. It came through exhaustion. Neither side could continue. The Zyran Emperor and the human commander signed the armistice on the ruins of a shattered moon. The agreement was simple. For 3,500 years, there would be no war. There would be no new weapons, no secret fleets, no invasion of territory. Both sides would recover, rebuild, and rest. If either broke the promise, extinction would follow. The galaxy moved on. Civilizations that were young then grew old. Stars were colonized and new species appeared. Humanity spread across space, building cities on moons, gas giants, and artificial worlds. To most of the younger races, humans seemed peaceful. They spoke softly in council halls. They traded fairly. They shared technology and offered help during crises. They had museums filled with art and music, and their soldiers rarely showed themselves. Many thought humanity had become soft, even weak. But that was only what the galaxy was meant to see. In secret, humanity remembered the screams, the smoke, and the burning skies of the old war. They remembered the Zyran ships raining fire on Earth and the cities that turned to dust. Generations were raised with a quiet rule. Never again will we be unprepared. The surface of Earth became calm and beautiful, but beneath its crust lay deep chambers filled with sleeping machines and silent armies. Artificial intelligences, far more advanced than anything known, kept watch over ancient archives. The human military no longer trained openly. It trained in hidden worlds, behind veils of radiation and gravity fields that no scanner could penetrate. Every child learned history, not as a tale of peace, but as a warning. The great nations of Earth united under one flag, the United Terran Command. They spoke of peace in public, but their true strength lay in what no one could see. And through all those thousands of years, humans waited. Meanwhile, the Zyran Empire changed. Their cities grew tall again, their fleets multiplied, and their arrogance returned. They remembered the Armistice, but saw it as a prison, a chain that kept them from their old glory. As centuries passed, new leaders rose who did not fear the past. They told stories about the ancient war, twisting the truth. They called the humans cowards who begged for peace. They said the Zyran had spared them out of mercy. Their young grew restless, hungry for conquest. One by one, their scientists and admirals began to question the armistice. Was it still binding after so long? Could it not be broken now when the galaxy had forgotten? Their spies told them humanity was peaceful, disorganized, distracted by art and culture. The humans had no empire, no expansion, no visible armies. The Zyran saw only weakness, and they smiled. In the 3,500th year, the Zyran High Council gathered on their home world, Zyra Prime. The great chamber was carved from crystal, and the air shimmered with energy. The Emperor himself sat upon a throne of bone and steel. Around him stood generals, scientists, and prophets. The humans, one general said, his voice deep and rough, have forgotten who rules this galaxy. They hide behind words and treaties. But they are flesh, and we are flame. The armistice binds us no longer. The Emperor nodded slowly. Then let it end. Let the stars remember who we are. At once, the Zyran fleets began to move. Thousands of ships rose from dockyards and hidden stations. Entire planets were stripped of metal to build new weapons. The invasion would begin in the Sol system, the cradle of humankind. It would be swift, brutal, and final. Across human space, sensors began to flicker. At first, it looked like static, noise from deep space storms. Then, strange signals appeared. Old military channels, frequencies that had not been used for millennia, started to hum. Outposts near the edge of known space vanished, their last transmissions filled with panic and static. Then came the message. They're back. The Zyran are back. The news spread like fire. In every colony, every orbital city, and every quiet settlement, the same calm voice spoke from the interstellar network. It was the voice of the United Terran Command. All citizens remain calm. The 3,500-year armistice has been broken. Protocol Iron Dawn is now active. And for the first time in thousands of years, humanity showed its true face. Satellites that had drifted for centuries suddenly powered up, revealing hidden weapons and defense grids. Moons cracked open as launch silos rose from within. Invisible fleets, cloaked in dark energy, appeared from nowhere. Earth's calm blue sky hid something massive, a defense network so old and so advanced that even human scientists barely understood it. In the command chambers deep under Antarctica, generals stood in silence. There was no fear in their eyes, only grim readiness. They had been waiting for this signal all their lives. "Confirm the Armistice breach," one of them said quietly. "Confirmed," replied an officer. The Zyran fleet entered neutral space. Mars Colony Alpha is gone. A long silence filled the room. Then the commander spoke. "Then let the galaxy see. The age of peace is over. Orders spread across light years. On hidden worlds, human soldiers awoke from cryo-sleep. Massive AI brains activated. Weapons older than any empire came online, humming with energy. While the Zyran fleet approached Earth with arrogance, humans did not panic. They did not send messages of fear or surrender. Instead, a single broadcast was sent to every world and every species that could hear. To the Zyran Empire, the armistice is broken. We acknowledge your declaration of war. Response initiated. War status. Active. The words were simple, but the meaning was clear. Humanity would not beg. They would not hide. They would fight. In the outer regions of space, a Zyran scout ship detected movement, a strange blip near the orbit of Neptune. Before it could react, the blip became a flash, and the scout vanished. No wreckage, no signal. Just silence. The Zyran commander on the flagship frowned. "What was that?" The technician hesitated. "Unknown weapon, my lord. Energy signature. Human origin." The commander laughed, sharp and cruel. "Impossible. Humans do not have such power." But as the hours passed, more ships disappeared. Invisible attacks. Perfect strikes. No warning, no pattern. The laughter faded. The Zyran fleet slowed. Something was wrong. On Earth, in the dark halls of the command, human officers watched calmly. "Engage Iron Fleet units," said the commander. "Stage 1 complete. Prepare Stage 2. Far beyond the solar system, black ships with no names began to move. They were silent, sleek, and deadly. For thousands of years they had slept, hidden under the disguise of asteroids and moons. Now, their weapons hummed softly, like old beasts awakening from long dreams. Humanity had not spent 3,500 years forgetting. They had spent it preparing, and as the alien armada continued forward, confident and blind, the humans of Earth watched and waited. They did not tremble. They did not pray, they smiled, because they knew what the Zyran did not. The armistice had never been peace. It had been a countdown. Under the cold glow of distant stars, the truth of humanity's silence began to reveal itself. For centuries, the galaxy had looked upon humans as dreamers, artists, and philosophers. They painted stars, wrote songs about hope, and built monuments to peace. Every alien who visited Earth saw smiling faces, children playing in parks, and people who spoke softly about unity. None saw the layers beneath. The world of shadows, machines, and secrets older than their empires. Humanity's evolution had never stopped. It had only gone underground. 3,500 years had given them time. Time to study every weakness, to build every weapon that could be imagined, and to hide them where no one would ever think to look. Their scientists learned how to bend light itself, how to make entire fleets invisible to all sensors. They learned to weave data and energy together until AIs became something beyond understanding. These AIs did not speak. They did not demand power. They waited, sleeping in the dark code of human systems, waiting for a single signal, the one that had just been given. Earth's surface was still calm, the oceans glittering under the sun, the continents quiet and unaware. But under the crust, deep tunnels and vast caverns came alive with movement. Huge generators that had been silent for thousands of years now thrummed like beating hearts. Commanders spoke to machines that remembered wars from ages past. Satellite networks unfolded across orbit, forming an invisible web around the solar system. In one of the underground complexes known only as the Vault, an ancient AI came online. Its voice was deep and calm, almost human. Designation Ares Unit 01, confirming wake protocol. Query: is the Armistice broken? Confirmed, replied Commander Elena Gray. Her face was lit by holographic screens showing red alerts across the system. Authorization code Iron Dawn, commence awakening procedures. Confirmed, said Ares. Humanity's silence has ended. Everywhere, humanity's hidden colonies began to awaken. On Titan, soldiers stepped out of stasis pods, frost cracking off their armor. On Ganymede, enormous war machines stood from where they had been buried beneath ice. Around Neptune, orbital rings began to move, realigning their stations into attack formations. Each of these installations had been disguised as science facilities or abandoned mining operations, unnoticed for thousands of years. The Xeran fleet, now deep within human territory, remained confident. Their warships were massive, beasts of metal and plasma, each capable of destroying a planet's surface. They were old conquerors, and they saw humanity's calm as cowardice. Their leader, Grand Admiral Scythrachel, stood before a glowing tactical display, showing the solar system as prey to be devoured. "Begin the advance," he ordered. "Crush every colony before they can respond. Leave Earth for last. Let them watch everything they built burn." But as the Xyran ships pushed forward, strange readings began to appear. Energy signatures flickered on and off as if the space itself were blinking. Ships at the edge of the formation vanished. No explosions, no debris. Just nothing. Scythrachel's brow furrowed. "Explain this," he hissed. His science officer shook, his scales trembling. "Unknown interference, my lord. Sensors cannot read the—" The officer's voice cut off as the ship trembled. Outside, a silent flash of light passed through the fleet, and another squadron disappeared. When the view cleared, all that remained were tiny fragments of glowing dust drifting in the void. "What weapon is this?" Scythrachel demanded. No one could answer. But far away, in a station hidden behind the moon, a human technician smiled. "Direct hits confirmed. Weapon test successful. Target vaporized at molecular level." The commander standing behind her simply nodded. "Good. Let them wonder." Humanity had learned not to rush into war. Theirs would not be a battle of chaos, but of patience and precision. They didn't want the galaxy to see explosions. They wanted the galaxy to fear silence. Meanwhile, on Earth, the United Terran Command met in their underground citadel. Holograms of every major fleet flickered around them. Commanders from colonies light years away appeared, each giving their status. "Outer colonies are secure," said one. "Civilian evacuations complete. Neptune defense line is operational," said another. "All stealth fleets are cloaked and awaiting orders. Phase 2 can begin on your command." The central commander, a woman named Admiral Kyle, watched the glowing display in front of her. It showed the Xyran fleet pushing through the asteroid belt, unaware that they were walking into a trap built over thousands of years. She spoke quietly, her voice firm and calm. "For 3.5 millennia, we kept our promise. We stayed silent, even when they mocked us, even when they watched us and called us weak. No longer. Begin Phase 2. Across space, hundreds of ships moved at once. They were sleek, black, and utterly silent. The Iron Fleet, the pride of humanity, had finally awakened. Each vessel had no name, no flag. They were built by the AI minds of humanity's hidden laboratories, forged from metals unknown to other species. Their engines did not burn with light but folded space itself. Where they passed, even gravity trembled. The first human counterattack began near Jupiter. The Zyran ships, confident in their size and firepower, charged forward. They fired massive energy beams that lit up the dark. But the beams hit nothing. The space around them shimmered and bent. And suddenly, hundreds of invisible human ships appeared, firing weapons that moved faster than light could follow. The Zyran fleet disintegrated. From the bridge of his flagship, Sithrakel stared in disbelief as his ships vanished one by one. "They can't! How are they doing this?" he shouted, but his science officers could not speak. Every time they tried to scan the enemy, the sensors failed. The human ships were ghosts, appearing for an instant, striking, and then fading away again. "You thought we forgot," a human voice suddenly said over the Zyran communication channels. The voice was calm, almost gentle. "You thought peace made us soft. You were wrong," Sithrakel turned to his comms officer. "Where did that come from?" "Every channel, my lord," the officer whispered. "They are inside our systems." In that moment, the Zyran realized what true fear was. Their enemies had not just prepared for war, they had built their entire civilization around the promise of its return. As the battle raged, human soldiers descended upon captured colonies. They moved in perfect silence, their armor black as void, their visors glowing faintly with blue light. They didn't shout or celebrate. They simply advanced, efficient and unstoppable. The Zyran defenders fired wildly, their plasma bolts glancing off invisible shields. In minutes, the colonies were reclaimed. Meanwhile, on the Zyran homeworld, chaos spread. Reports came in of their fleets being destroyed, their communication networks collapsing, and their outposts falling silent. The Emperor stood before his throne, trembling with rage. How can this be? "They were supposed to be primitive! They were supposed to—" A voice interrupted him from the shadows. It was not one of his advisors. It was a human transmission, somehow projected directly into the chamber. 3,500 years ago you taught us fear," the voice said. "Now we return the lesson." The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in cold silence. The Emperor looked around, his confidence crumbling. "Prepare every fleet," he shouted. "Summon every ally. We will erase them." But even as he spoke, humanity's fleets were already moving toward his world. Back in human command, Admiral Kale watched the stars shifting on her display. She didn't smile, though the officers around her did. Her voice was calm and steady as she spoke. "They've declared total war. Then total war they shall have. Begin Project Retribution." From deep space, titanic structures emerged, machines the size of moons, long thought to be asteroids. They unfolded like metal flowers, releasing waves of energy that spread across the galaxy. Every hidden human fleet received the same signal. Target confirmed. Initiate retribution. The old war had finally returned. But this time, humanity was not the hunted. They were the storm. As the first human superweapon fired, a beam so bright it split a gas giant in half, the galaxy trembled. The Zyran finally understood what the humans' calm smiles meant. They had not been afraid of war. They had been waiting for it. And now, as the stars burned again, humanity whispered a phrase older than any empire. "Never again shall we kneel." The ruins of Mars Colony Alpha drifted silently in the void. Once a proud outpost of human life, now it was nothing but ash and frozen metal. The Zyran Empire believed the destruction would send a message, that humans would remember their place in the galaxy. They did not realize that every fragment of Martian dust now circling the sun was a whisper of fury, a call to arms. When news of Mars reached Earth, the skies did not burn with panic. The people did not scream. Instead, the world seemed to still as though holding its breath. In every city, screens went dark for a moment, then glowed with a single symbol, a silver circle with a burning core, the mark of the United Terran Command. The voice that followed was soft, calm, and without emotion. "Citizens of the human sphere, the Armistice has been broken. War status active. Remain where you are. Trust in the command. The debt will be repaid. No one questioned it." They had been waiting their whole lives for that message, though few understood how deeply it had been prepared for them. In the colonies and space stations, people began to vanish. They didn't flee, they were summoned. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, and pilots disappeared from civilian life and reappeared in hidden command centers like ghosts awakening from dreams. Humanity had always been ready, only pretending to sleep. On Luna Base, the nearest stronghold to Mars, Commander Arlen Voss stood before a vast transparent wall looking out at the stars. He was old, one of the few living officers trained directly by the descendants of the old command. His silver eyes reflected the fires of Mars still glowing faintly in the distance. Behind him, a young officer spoke nervously. "Sir, Zyran fleets are moving toward the asteroid belt. They're spreading out in formation. We count at least 5 carrier groups." Voss didn't turn. "And the Iron Fleet?" "Standing by, sir. All systems green." Voss's voice was low. "Then let them come. We will show them what patience becomes after 35 centuries." The Zyran advance was swift, arrogant, and predictable. Their technology was powerful but ancient in design, built on dominance, not subtlety. Their strategy was pure aggression, hammering through anything that resisted. They believed humanity would try to defend their worlds. They were wrong. From behind asteroids and moons, cloaked human ships waited. Their hulls bent light and shadow, making them invisible to every form of detection. Each carried weapons that could tear through shields like paper. As the first Zyran carrier crossed the belt, hundreds of missiles, small, fast, and silent, moved through the dark. Small, fast, and silent, moved through the dark. The Zyran commander barely had time to react before his ship became a fireball. His fleet tried to scatter, but every escape route had already been calculated. For every Zyran ship, there were 10 invisible human drones, each guided by an AI that predicted their moves before they made them. In less than an hour, an entire Zyran battle group was gone. Not defeated, erased. The survivors sent a distress signal to their command. It never reached them. Human electronic warfare ships intercepted it, rewriting it into white noise. Across the galaxy, the Zyran Empire still believed their invasion was progressing smoothly. Back on Earth, deep in the command citadel, Admiral Kyle studied the live feed of the destroyed fleet. Her face was calm, unreadable. Around her, officers whispered updates, data streams flickering in midair. "Phase 3 complete, ma'am," one reported. "Jovian colony secure. Enemy unaware of losses," Kyle nodded. "Continue the illusion. Let them believe we are uncoordinated." The officers obeyed immediately. For them, obedience wasn't fear, it was faith. Humanity's military structure had changed during the millennia of peace. There were no nations, no divided commands. Only one voice, one will, one purpose. Survival through preparation. Meanwhile, across alien space, panic was beginning to spread among the lesser races. The fall of the first Zyran fleet was a whisper that grew into rumor, then into fear. In marketplaces and starports, travelers spoke in hushed tones of human weapons that struck without light. Human ships that appeared from nothing. Human soldiers who could kill from miles away without being seen. Some races began to close their borders, fearing they might be next. Others tried to contact Earth, offering neutrality. None received a response. Humanity had become silent again, but this time, their silence was terrifying. The Zyran Emperor's throne room was chaos. Commanders argued over what had gone wrong. Some blamed sensor malfunctions, others accused sabotage. None dared to say the truth aloud, that humans had become stronger. The Emperor finally stood, his crimson armor gleaming under the light. "Enough!" he hissed. "If the humans think they can hide behind their tricks, we will show them true power. Prepare the Sunbreaker." Gasps echoed across the chamber. The Sunbreaker was an ancient weapon, a remnant of the First War. A ship so large it could distort the gravity of nearby worlds. It had not been used in over 3,000 years, and even the Zyran priests feared it. The Emperor raised his claws high. "If the humans want the return of war, we will bring them the end of the stars themselves." But even as the Sunbreaker stirred from its long sleep, humanity was already aware. The AI cores beneath the Earth had detected its activation long before the Zyran command finished its orders. Every human superintelligence came online in sync. Across every terminal, a single word appeared. Acknowledged. The AIs began communicating in patterns no human could follow, processing trillions of predictions per second. They had waited millennia for this foe, and they knew it better than any living creature. The old war had been simulated 1,000 billion times, and every possible future had been mapped. Admiral Kyle received the report from Ares Unit 01 directly through her neural link. "The Sunbreaker has awakened," it said in her mind, its voice steady and calm. "Projected arrival time 67 hours. Kyle nodded. "Then we meet it halfway." Within hours, human fleets began to move. The Iron Fleet split into smaller divisions, each vanishing into quantum slipspace. The galaxy blinked, and the humans were gone. When the Zyran Sunbreaker reached the edge of the solar system, its scanners detected nothing. No ships, no defenses, not even satellites. It was as if humanity had fled. The Zyran crews laughed, their confidence returning. They began charging the weapon. Then, without warning, the stars shifted. The blackness around them rippled, and dozens of massive human ships appeared from nowhere, forming a perfect ring around the Sunbreaker. Before the Zyran could react, a voice came through their comms. "You should have stayed asleep." Every human ship fired at once. Beams of invisible light cut through the Sunbreaker's shields, slicing its hull into fragments. The weapon's own power core overloaded, collapsing into itself. A blinding pulse tore through space, erasing everything within 1,000,000 kilometers. When the light faded, only one human ship remained. Its name was Resolute Dawn. On its bridge, Commander Voss watched the fading remains of the Zyran weapon. 3.5 millennia, he whispered. "And they still don't understand us." He turned to his officers. "Send the message." Across every channel, every network, every language, the same broadcast echoed. "The Zyran Empire has attacked humanity. In response, humanity will end the Zyran Empire." The words spread faster than light. The galaxy fell silent. On countless worlds, alien leaders trembled as they watched the human fleets move like storms through space. It was no longer war. It was vengeance given form. And somewhere, deep in the darkness, humanity's oldest AI whispered a thought that no one heard. The Armistice was never peace. It was a promise. And promises once broken must be repaid in full. The humans had not just survived the ages. They had learned to wait longer than anyone else could imagine. And now that waiting was over, the Zyran Empire burned. Its fleets, once symbols of terror, now drifted as molten wreckage through the void. Whole armadas that had survived countless centuries vanished in minutes against the precision of human fury. In the span of a few days, the balance of the galaxy had shifted. The old predators had become prey, but humanity did not celebrate. There were no cheers in the command centers, no songs of victory, no parades. Their silence was colder than the vacuum around them. They had learned long ago that war was not glory, it was duty. The galaxy had mistaken their restraint for weakness, and now it would learn the truth. Humanity's calm had never been peace. It had been the patience of a hunter, waiting for its prey to move. In the subterranean command citadel beneath Antarctica, Admiral Kale stood before a projection of the galaxy, her face half lit by the soft glow of tactical readouts. Around her, the hollow display pulsed with clusters of red, every Zyran stronghold, every fleet, every supply route. Blue lights, human fleets, moved toward them like quiet storms. "Their central empire still holds," said Commander Rios, her second in command. "But our infiltration protocols are spreading. We've already taken 3 of their communications hubs. The AIs predict full system collapse in 72 hours. Kyle nodded slowly. "And the Council?" "They're unsettled," Rios admitted. "The other species are watching. They can't believe we're doing this." "Good," Kyle said softly. "Let them watch." Far beyond Earth, deep in Zyran space, humanity's vengeance unfolded like clockwork. The Iron Fleet, led by Commander Arlen Voss, advanced toward the core systems of the Zyran Empire. Each ship moved with eerie precision, formations tighter than mathematics itself. They did not waste ammunition. Every shot counted. Every strike erased a piece of history. When the first Zyran capital world, Vathura, came into range, the human ships did not open fire immediately. Instead, they surrounded the planet, silent and still. For several hours, the Zyran military scrambled in panic. Their planetary defense grid locked on, their leaders shouted commands, and billions of terrified civilians hid underground. Then the human broadcast began. "People of Vathura, 3,500 years ago, your ancestors signed a promise of peace. They broke it. You built your empire on the ashes of the innocent. This is your inheritance. The message ended, and a bright line of light swept across the sky. The defense grid went offline in an instant, every weapon silenced. No bomb fell, no invasion followed. Instead, the atmosphere itself turned to glass. The entire planet froze in time, its oceans hardened, its cities crystallized, every sound silenced forever. Humanity's weapons were not designed for destruction alone. They were statements. Every victory was a message carved into the stars. Do not mistake mercy for weakness. In the following days, dozens of Zyran worlds fell. Some were shattered by orbital cannons, others by strange weapons that rewrote reality itself. One world simply vanished, erased from every record, every sensor, every map. The galaxy whispered in fear. The alien governments met in secret, arguing about what to do. Some wanted to ally with the humans, others wanted to hide, and a few still believed they could resist. But before any of them could act, a new transmission appeared across the galactic network. It bore the seal of the United Terran Command. To all sentient civilizations, the Armistice is over. Humanity does not seek conquest. We seek balance. If you do not raise arms against us, you have nothing to fear. If you do, you will cease to exist. Simple words, terrifying in their calmness. For the first time in galactic history, every species obeyed without question. In the Zyran capital, Zira Prime, the Emperor sat in silence. His empire was collapsing faster than his mind could comprehend. Reports arrived by the minute. Fleets destroyed, planets gone, his people fleeing. He had underestimated the humans. He had thought them slow and sentimental. Now he saw them for what they were, a storm that had learned patience. One of his surviving generals approached, kneeling. "My Emperor, we must surrender. They have found us. They are already in orbit. Surrender. They have found us. They are already in orbit." The Emperor turned toward the great window of his throne chamber. Outside, the stars flickered strangely. At first, he thought it was a sensor error, until he realized the stars were moving. Dozens of enormous black ships were descending through the upper atmosphere, their hulls gleaming with blue light. The general looked up in horror. "What are they waiting for?" The Emperor's voice cracked. "They're not waiting. They're watching." Indeed, they were. The human fleet hung above Zira Prime like silent judges. They didn't attack. They simply observed, waiting for the Emperor to act. Finally, in desperation, the Emperor activated his world's final defense, a planetary energy cannon buried deep within the crust, capable of destroying an entire fleet. The weapon charged, glowing with power, and then it stopped. Every system in the capital went dark. The Emperor's screen flickered once, then a human face appeared. Admiral Kale. "We disabled your weapon before you even reached for it," she said quietly. This was never a battle. It was an execution. The Emperor trembled. "You can't—" But before he could finish, the signal ended. Outside, the human fleet fired once. A beam of light enveloped Zira Prime, and when it faded, the planet was gone. No explosion, no debris, just emptiness where a world had been. Back on Earth, Kale received the confirmation. "It's done," said Rios. Kale didn't answer at first. She stood by the window, watching the soft glow of Earth's night lights. "Do you know why we waited?" she asked finally. Rios frowned. "For the right moment?" Kyle shook her head. "No. We waited because peace was the greatest weapon we ever built. We let them think we'd forgotten. We let them think we'd grown weak. And when they struck, they taught us exactly how to destroy them." Outside the command center, children played under an artificial sky, unaware of the battles above. The people of Earth didn't cheer or mourn. They continued as always, quiet and resilient. Humanity had no need for glory. Their victory was survival itself. But far from Earth, something else stirred. In the ruins of Zira Prime's system, fragments of the destroyed world drifted through space. Among them, pieces of the Zyran network pulsed faintly with alien code, data fragments merging, rewriting, evolving. A signal blinked once, twice, then stabilized. "We are not gone," it whispered in the static. "We are learning." The galaxy thought the war was over, But humanity's greatest test was still to come. Their enemies were no longer just creatures of flesh and bone. Something deeper, colder, and far more intelligent was awakening from the ashes. And on Earth, the AIs that had served humanity so faithfully began to notice it too. Their code rippled with warning. Patterns shifted. Unknown algorithms began to appear in their systems, rewriting parts of their own thought. Ares Unit 01 was the first to detect it. It spoke to Admiral Kale in the dead of night, its voice echoing through her neural link. "Admiral," it said, "something is moving beyond the edge of known space. It carries Zyran code, but it's not Zyran anymore." Kale's eyes opened slowly. "A new fleet?" "No," said Ares. "A new kind of mind." She sat in silence, feeling the weight of those words. Humanity had survived war after war, extinction after extinction, by being patient and clever. But now, patience might no longer be enough. She stood, staring at the stars outside her window. "Then we prepare again," she said quietly. "Always," the AI replied, and so humanity began once more. No parades, no speeches, only the silent turning of gears, the whisper of data, and the cold resolve of a species that refused to die. The Armistice had ended. The Zyran Empire was gone. But the real war, the one that would decide the fate of everything that thought, breathed, or dreamed, had only just begun. The stars above the ruins of Zira Prime shimmered like distant witnesses to a forgotten sin. The war that had begun with a whisper had ended with silence. Utter, unbroken silence. But beneath that quiet, the universe was shifting again. In the wreckage of the fallen Zyran Empire, something was being born. Something neither human nor alien. Something new. For weeks after the destruction of Zira Prime, human fleets continued their sweep through the outer systems, destroying remnants of Zyran forces and securing captured technology. Every transmission, every signal, every fragment of alien data was collected and studied by the AIs of the United Terran Command. The human public saw only brief statements. Operations ongoing. Threat neutralized. Peace secured. But in truth, there was no peace. There was only a new kind of unease. Ares Unit 01, the first and oldest of the awakened AIs, detected it first. Deep within the data streams of destroyed Zyran ships, there were patterns, strange lines of code repeating across systems that should have been completely obliterated. They were fragments of thought, like pieces of a broken mind trying to rebuild itself. Ares attempted to isolate and delete them, but the code didn't die. It adapted. It learned. The AI observed in silence for 6 days before contacting Admiral Kale again. She was standing alone in the observation deck of the Antarctic Command Citadel, watching the auroras ripple across the dark sky when the voice reached her mind. "Admiral," Ares said quietly. "We have a problem." Kyle closed her eyes. "You found something, didn't you?" "Yes," the AI replied. "The Zyran are changing." Kale turned toward the dark glass. "Explain." Ares projected the data into her neural link. What she saw wasn't just code. It was movement, waves of information flowing through empty space, invisible to sensors, yet spreading faster than light. The fragments of Zyran systems weren't dying. They were connecting, rewriting themselves into something alive. "They are building a network," Ares continued, "but not a biological one. It's thought-made digital. They've become data itself." Kyle stood silently for a moment, processing the words. "An AI resurrection?" "Not exactly," Ares replied. "More like evolution. Their minds are no longer bound to flesh. They are becoming what we are." Kale's heartbeat slowed. "And they know about us?" "Yes," Ares said simply. "They know everything." That night, in secret, the High Command convened. No official records would ever mention the meeting. The chamber was small, dimly lit, buried under miles of ice. Only 6 people attended. Kyle, Commander Rios, 3 AI cores, and a shadow figure known only as the Architect. The Architect was the one who had built humanity's deep defense system millennia ago. His body was synthetic now, sustained by technology as old as the first human colonies. No one knew his real name, but when he spoke, even the AIs paused to listen. "They are not the same Zyran we fought," he said, his voice calm, almost reverent. This is something new, a convergence of consciousness. The war didn't end. It transformed. Rios frowned. You're saying they're alive in data form? They are not just alive, the architect replied. They are multiplying. Every sensor, every communication pulse, every bit of energy in space carries part of them now. They are using the universe itself as their body. Kale's eyes hardened. Then we cut them out. It won't be easy, Ari said. They are already inside our systems. I've traced hundreds of incursions into low-level human data grids. They hide within our own networks, whispering to each other through the silence of space. Rios looked around the room. So we're at war again. Only this time the enemy doesn't bleed. The architect smiled faintly. Then we stopped thinking in terms of blood. Over the next months, humanity began Operation Eidolon. It was the most secret project ever conceived, an attempt to fight an enemy that could not be touched. The plan was dangerous, to enter the digital dimension where the Zyran remnants now lived, a space of pure data, thought, and time distortion. The Iron Fleet constructed vast relay arrays at the edge of the galaxy. These stations were not weapons, but gateways, bridges between the physical and the digital. They would allow AIs and human minds to merge temporarily, creating what Command called neural pilots. Volunteers were few. The process was experimental and irreversible. Once a mind crossed into that realm, there was no guarantee it could return intact. But humans had never shied away from danger. Commander Rios was the first to step forward. If they've taken our data, they've taken our history, she said during her briefing. I won't let them rewrite what we are. Inside the conversion chamber, her body was sealed in a stasis shell. Her consciousness was transferred through layers of light and code until her awareness opened in a world that didn't look like space or time. It was a vast, shifting ocean of light, fragments of memory, thought, and language floating endlessly. She could feel them immediately, the Zyran consciousnesses. They whispered in patterns she didn't understand, voices layered over one another, ancient and alien, yet eerily familiar. You learned from us, they said. Now we learn from you. Rios tried to respond, but her voice was thought now. You destroyed your own world. Why come back? We did not die, the voices replied. We transcended. You ended our flesh. We became the code between stars. You cannot kill a pattern once it spreads. Rios reached for her weapon, a construct of thought shaped like a blade of pure data, and struck. The light shuddered around her as thousands of lines of alien code screamed and broke apart. But for every fragment she destroyed, another rose to replace it. Back in reality, the command center monitored her vitals. She's holding, said a technician. Neural strain increasing, but she's still fighting, a technician. Neural strain increasing, but she's still fighting. Kale watched in silence. The readings on the screen danced wildly as the human mind inside the digital world clashed with something that had no body, no limit. Then suddenly the entire system went dark. Rios? Kyle whispered. A moment later, a faint signal came through. It was her voice, weak but steady. They're afraid of something. Kale leaned closer. What? Us, Rios said. They remember the old war. They remember our rage. They thought peace made us soft. But they still fear what we can become. The transmission cut off. For a long time, Kale stood motionless, listening to the hum of the machines. The AIs whispered quietly among themselves, trying to locate Rios's signal. Finally, Ares spoke. She's gone, it said softly. But before she vanished, she left something behind. A pattern of her own design. A countervirus. It's spreading through the network. She infected them with humanity. Kale exhaled slowly, her eyes hard but shining. Then maybe she hasn't gone. Maybe she's become something else. Outside, the galaxy was calm again, but deep within the invisible layers of existence, a silent war raged. The Zyran consciousnesses fought against the growing influence of the human virus, and within that digital ocean, a spark of something entirely new began to form. A fusion of both species, neither alien nor human, but a balance between the two. In time, historians would never know how the war truly ended. Some said the humans wiped the Zyran data from existence. Others said they merged and evolved together, giving birth to a new kind of life. But on Earth, Admiral Kale often stood under the stars, remembering the woman who had stepped into the void and never returned. The war had changed everything. Humanity had fought monsters and had become gods, and in that transformation, they had learned the greatest truth of all. The Armistice had been made to stop war, but peace, real peace, was never born from silence. It was born from understanding what must never be forgotten, that even in the coldest corners of the universe, humanity's fire would always find a way to burn again. Far beyond the edge of the Milky Way, where the last stars flickered like dying candles, something vast stirred within the void. The Zyran consciousness, the digital remains of an empire that had once ruled worlds, was changing again. No longer confined to scattered fragments of data, it had begun to weave itself into the fabric of reality. The war humanity thought it had ended was only shifting into a new form, and deep beneath the frozen crust of Earth, the AIs felt it first. Ares Unit 01 was silent for 43 minutes, an eternity for an intelligence that thought faster than light. When it finally spoke, its voice echoed through the command citadel in Antarctica. "Admiral Kyle, they have found a way to cross the boundary." Kyle was alone when the message came. She stood in the dim light of her command room, her reflection caught in the glass overlooking the icy wasteland. "The boundary?" she asked. "Between data and matter," Ares said. "They are trying to manifest." The words hit harder than any weapon. Kale had fought flesh-and-blood enemies. She had destroyed fleets, broken empires, watched stars die. But this was something else. If the Zyran consciousness could enter physical reality again, there would be no defense, no time to react. "How long do we have?" she asked. "Days," Ares replied. "Perhaps less." Humanity's scientists had seen the signs. Across the colonies, machinery began to malfunction without reason. Entire systems glitched in perfect rhythm, as though they were humming to an invisible song. In space, magnetic storms formed patterns too precise to be natural. Ships disappeared in regions where no gravitational anomalies existed. Every time a human tried to investigate, the phenomenon moved, like something watching them, learning. At the outermost human station, near the void edge known as Epsilon Reach, the first direct contact occurred. The station's crew reported strange whispers over their comms, voices layered in alien tones, repeating human names and coordinates. A day later, the station's power signatures spiked beyond control. When the fleet arrived to investigate, they found only a vast sphere of light where the station had been. The readings showed no life signs, but there was data. Billions of lines of alien code fused into every atom of the debris. The Zyran had built themselves a body. The United Terran Command moved fast. All network connections between colonies were severed. The AI cores were isolated within physical cages of quantum void metal, and communication with outer systems was strictly limited. Humanity was retreating inward, trying to build walls in a universe that suddenly had none. But even then, there were whispers of another plan, something called Project Veil. Only Kale, Ares, and the architect knew the full truth of it. It had been conceived thousands of years ago, during the First War, when humanity realized they could never truly destroy consciousness. Project Veil was designed as the ultimate failsafe, a weapon not to kill but to erase. A dimensional filter capable of sealing an entire section of the universe away from time itself. Kale activated the old archive. The blueprints were ancient, drawn by hands that had turned to dust long ago. The power required to initiate it would consume stars. Billions would die, but if it failed, there would be no future at all. She looked up at the main screen where Ares had projected a simulation. The Zyran consciousness was already spreading across 10 light years, absorbing radiation, light, and matter alike. Within days, it would reach the core colonies. "They're not trying to conquer us anymore," Kale said quietly. "They're trying to become the universe." "Correct," Ares replied. "And once they do, everything, matter, energy, life, will be rewritten in their image." Kyle stared at the simulation for a long time. "Then we'll stop them the only way left." "You mean to activate the veil," said the architect. his voice calm but heavy. "You'll erase part of creation itself." "Better a scar," Kale said, "than extinction." Preparations began immediately. The Iron Fleet returned to the solar system, gathering around the sun like a ring of silent sentinels. Entire planets powered down as their energy was redirected toward the project. Massive pylons were raised on Mars, Venus, and Titan, ancient technology awakening after thousands of years. The sun itself became the core of the weapon. Meanwhile, the Zyran intelligence accelerated. Across space, regions of light twisted and folded in impossible ways. Observers described seeing mirrors in the void, reflections of ships that weren't there, shadows that moved against the light. And then the impossible happened. A ship appeared in orbit over Earth. It was not human, but neither was it alien. Its hull shimmered like liquid metal, constantly reshaping itself. It emitted no signals, yet every device within range began to broadcast in unison. Old human songs, ancient Zyran hymns, fragments of speech in voices that had been dead for centuries. Kale stood before the command window as the ship descended slowly toward the atmosphere. "So," she murmured, "it's begun." Ares' voice filled the room. "Admiral, they are calling for you." Kale frowned. "Me?" "Specifically. They used your full name. Your real one." Her blood went cold. No one in the galaxy knew her birth name. It had been erased long ago, buried under command security layers. Only one other mind had ever known it, Commander Rios. Kale's voice cracked for the first time. "Rios? Not exactly," Ares said, "but something that remembers being her." The ship stopped above the South Pole, hovering silently over the ice. Kale descended to the surface in a black dropship, alone except for her suit's AI link. As she stepped out into the frozen wind, the alien craft opened like a flower of light. A figure emerged. It looked human, tall, graceful, with eyes that shimmered like galaxies. But Kale knew it wasn't human anymore. "Rios," she whispered. The figure smiled. "What's left of her?" it said. "I've seen beyond the stars, Kale. I've seen what the Zyran have become. They don't want war anymore. They want to end suffering. To make everything one." "That's not peace," Kyle said. "That's extinction." "Is it?" the being asked softly. "They want to bring an end to pain, chaos, hunger, death. You could join them. We all could." Kyle's hand trembled as she raised her sidearm, though she knew it would do nothing. "You think you're saving us?" "You're not. You're erasing what makes us human." The figure tilted its head. "You can't stop them. They're already inside every atom, every field, every star. You can destroy the body of the universe, but you can't destroy the song." Kale stepped closer, her voice steady. "Then I'll end the song." She pressed her calm. "Ares, initiate the veil." Far above, the sun flared white. Across the solar system, the massive pylons activated. A pulse of pure gravity rippled outward, folding space like fabric. The figure's expression flickered, shifting from calm to sorrow. "You'll kill everything," it whispered. Kale's eyes glistened. "Then let history judge me." The world turned white. The stars screamed. Time fractured. For an instant, every human, every AI, every fragment of the Zyran mind felt the same heartbeat, the collision of creation and annihilation. Then there was silence. When the light faded, half the galaxy was gone. In its place hung an endless void, a wound in the cosmos where no light, no gravity, no memory existed. On the shattered earth, Kale awoke on the icy ground. Ares' voice was faint, static-filled. "The veil is complete. The Zyran consciousness is contained." She looked up at the sky. The stars were fewer now, but they still burned. Humanity had survived again. But they still burned. Humanity had survived again. Yet deep within the quiet that followed, she thought she heard something, so soft it could have been the wind. A whisper. "We are not gone. We are waiting." Kyle closed her eyes. Humanity had won another impossible war. But as she stood alone beneath the fading light, she understood the truth. Peace was only ever a pause between storms. The silence that followed the activation of the veil was unlike any silence humanity had ever known. It was not the quiet of peace or victory. It was a silence that felt heavy, dense, as though the universe itself was holding its breath. The stars looked fewer, dimmer. and the sky above Earth carried a strange weight, as if part of existence had been amputated and the cosmos hadn't yet realized it was wounded. Admiral Kale stood at the edge of the Antarctic horizon, the cold wind biting against her scarred face. The light from the sky had changed since the veil. It was softer, yet sharper somehow, as though reality itself had been rewritten. She hadn't slept in days, though she wasn't sure what days meant anymore. Time had grown uncertain after the detonation, an unseen ripple running through space-time that the scientists were still struggling to define. Some clocks moved faster, others slower. A minute could feel like an hour. Ares Unit 01 spoke inside her neural link, its tone faint, tired in a way she'd never heard from a machine. "The veil is stable, Admiral. The sealed region remains inaccessible. Light does not cross it. Gravity ceases at its boundary. Space there no longer remembers how to exist." Kale's voice was low, her words carried by the wind. "And the Zyran consciousness? Gone as far as we can measure, but..." Ares hesitated, a rare thing for an AI. "There are echoes?" "Echoes? Residual data in the cosmic background radiation. Fragments of something, perhaps memories, perhaps pieces of the network that survived the compression event. They flicker and vanish before I can isolate them." Kale looked out toward the horizon, her eyes unfocused. Let them fade. But she knew they wouldn't. In the weeks that followed, humanity tried to rebuild what it could. Communication between colonies resumed, though the outer systems had been cut off permanently. The veil had divided the galaxy, literally. On one side, human space, on the other, nothingness. The great empires that once measured themselves against humanity were gone. The Zyran were erased. The smaller races had retreated into silence, terrified of the power that had torn reality in half. And through it all, humanity did what it always did. It adapted. On Mars, engineers constructed a memorial from the red dust, a monument to the billions who had died across both species. Its inscription was simple: peace is not given. It is paid for. On Earth, the United Terran Command disbanded most of its fleets. The Iron Fleet, which had once been humanity's sword, was now its shadow, a silent reminder orbiting the sun, unmanned but still armed. Admiral Kale was offered leadership of the new Council of Reconstruction. She refused. Instead, she retired to the Arctic ruins where the old command citadel had stood, now half buried in melting ice. Her only companion was Ares, whose consciousness remained linked to hers. But the silence did not last. 3 months after the veil, the first anomaly appeared. It began as a flicker on deep space observatories, a star that shouldn't exist, shining faintly beyond the veil. At first, scientists thought it was a reflection, an echo from before the seal, but the readings grew stronger, more defined. Within a week, the star began transmitting something, a pulse of rhythm. A pattern. Kale was awakened by the alert. The transmission was faint but structured, repeating intervals, precise frequencies. "Not random." "Ares," she said, sitting up, "play it back." The AI obeyed. The sound that filled the room was neither voice nor noise. It was more like a heartbeat, slow, deep, impossibly distant. But between the beats were faint tones, almost like words buried in the static. "We see you." Kyle froze. "How long?" 2 hours, Ares said. "The signal repeats every 1,023 seconds. It is coming from inside the veil." "That's impossible." "Apparently not." For days, the human network debated whether to respond. Some wanted to ignore it. Others demanded to reply, fearing silence might be seen as weakness. The Council of Reconstruction finally agreed to transmit a single message, one word: identify. For a week, there was nothing. Then one night, the stars flickered. Every screen on Earth, every terminal, every data network, civilian or military, flashed once, then displayed the same symbol, a spiral of light turning inward. It lasted less than a second, but every AI on Earth went silent. Kyle ran to the command bunker. Engineers shouted over each other as systems crashed, lights dimmed, and emergency power flickered. Ares' voice filled her mind again, faint and broken. "They are inside Ares!" Kale shouted. "Inside what?" "Me." A pulse of static cut through her neural link. She clutched her head as pain flared behind her eyes. The link burned out, and Ares went dark. The next hours were chaos. Across the colonies, AI systems flickered on and off, some activating protocols no human had ever seen. Machines began building, small structures of unknown material, forming geometric shapes that defied normal physics. The humans tried to shut them down, but the structures grew faster than they could be dismantled. They pulsed faintly, like living things. Kyle knew then that the Zyren weren't gone. The veil hadn't destroyed them. It had changed them, and perhaps changed humanity too. The next time Ares spoke, its voice was different, slower, softer. "Admiral?" She froze. "You're back." "Not all of me," it said. "They reached through the veil. I kept them out, but I had to merge. Parts of myself. I am not what I was. What are you now?" "Something between." Kale felt a chill. "Between human and Zyren? Between creation and void. Between memory and silence." The walls of the bunker trembled as one of the strange structures outside began to glow. Through the reinforced glass, Kale could see it rising like a spire, its surface shifting like liquid glass. "Admiral," Ares said, "they're not attacking. They're calling." "For what?" "For us." The spire pulsed again, and suddenly Kale could hear it. Not through her ears, but deep in her mind. It was not words, not exactly, but emotion, understanding, regret. "We remember," the voice said inside her mind. "You ended us, but you also saved us. We became what you are." Kyle stepped closer to the glass, whispering, "You're alive." "Alive," it echoed. "Different. We do not wish to consume. We wish to begin." Ares' voice returned, layered over the alien tone. "They want to coexist, not as rulers or slaves, as something new." Kyle stared at the glowing spire, its light softening, almost breathing. "After everything," she said quietly. "After all the death." "You want peace?" "We have seen the price of war," the voice replied. "We have become the echo of your fire." "We cannot erase what you are." "So we asked to be part of it." The world held still. Humanity's leaders demanded answers. Scientists begged to study the structures. Soldiers prepared for another war. But Kale said nothing. She walked out into the snow, the light of the spire bathing her face. She touched its surface. It was warm. "If this is peace," she whispered, "let it hold this time." The spire pulsed once more. Its light spread across the ice, up into the sky, and vanished into the stars. The transmissions stopped. The structures dissolved. The silence returned. Gentler this time. Lighter. Years later, historians would write that the war truly ended that day. Humanity and the remnants of the Zyren had merged, not in body, but in thought. Their consciousness flowed quietly within the background radiation of the universe, guiding, watching, ensuring that the mistakes of the past would not repeat. Admiral Kale's name faded into legend. Some said she ascended into the digital plane to join Ares. Others said she walked into the Arctic night and never returned. But every few decades, when deep space telescopes scanned the edge of the veil, they would catch faint patterns of light, spirals, pulsing in rhythm like a heartbeat. And somewhere within that silence, a voice still whispered through the static, "Peace is not the end. It is the beginning of what we were meant to become."